Huzzah! A new 1D&D playtest! Let's talk about the new Paladin and the new spells it gets. Welcome to Pack Tactics, where everyone in my Kobold aura has advantage. Kobold, that's homebrew! Gator, calm down, I'm just joking around. Like with the other playtests, I'm not gonna talk about literally everything, just the important stuff that, well, I think is worth talking about. We're just gonna start. Like Ranger in the Expert Classes playtest, Paladin now gets access to cantrips by default, and starts getting spells at level 1. I really like this. Awesome. Yay! Divine Smite. Let's start with the negative and work our way up. You can only use it once per turn. It comes after your attack and is no extra damage to the attack, and thus it does not double on a crit. It doesn't deal extra damage to fiends, and you cannot have cast a spell on the same turn, meaning you cannot combine it with the smite spells. This is a huge hit to the power of Divine Smite. It was never incredible, but it had a good niche in being able to do nice Nova damage. But wow, this is a hefty set of nerfs that really destroy that niche. I don't like this. They also removed the cap for the damage. You might think that's kind of broken, but it's not. A straight class Paladin can only get 1d8 higher, and it's almost never worth using your highest level spell slot on this, especially if you are multiclassing with other caster levels. Now for the good stuff. Smites now do damage when used with unarmored strikes. Last, and certainly not least, you can use it with ranged weapon attacks now. This is really huge for Paladins, as previously they were restricted to use Divine Smite in melee. And not only that, they can also pick up the archery fighting style now. Combining these two things, and you're looking at a ranged Paladin being better than a melee Paladin. Even straight classed, especially if your allies are spellcasters who prefer to stay at range, as you can keep them in the aura easily. A pretty interesting development. One thing to consider when making a ranged Paladin is that multiclassing requires you to have a strength score of 13. I've always found this weird in 5e, but it makes even less sense now. Now, this might not be an issue for you, because currently Paladin is quite backloaded. Anyways, personally, I hope they change the multiclassing requirements to be strength or dexterity of 13, or just remove it. Let's cover all the smite spells now. I think they did a decent job with them, but there are definitely issues in the bigger picture. I really appreciate the way they changed their casting time. Bonus action, which you take immediately after hitting a target with a weapon or an unarmored strike. This basically means you never expend your spell slots without getting to use the smite spell. In 5e, you use your bonus action and pray you actually hit at some point. These smite spells also work with ranged attacks too now. Here's something funny, by the way. The damage is doubled on a crits with these smites. It's got language such as, the target takes an extra 2d6 thunder damage. There's currently not a lot of reasons to use Divine Smite anymore, as the smite spells have rider effects. Sure, they do less damage, but the rider effects are really appealing. Anyways, Banishing Smite got a similar change as Banishment, meaning repeated saving throws for the enemy, though it doesn't require concentration, which may be something they changed for Banishment too in the future. I do think repeated saving throws still makes this kinda bad. Blinding Smite got a decent buff too, as it also no longer requires concentration. Glimmering Smite. This was called Branding Smite before. It got a sneaky buff to its damage, and it can be quite a lot depending on your party. You give anyone advantage to attack them without a saving throw. Awesome spell. Wow, I hope they don't nerf this to the ground. It's really good. This is the new smite spell that you use all the time. Searing Smite still sucks. Staggering Smite stuns a target and no longer requires concentration. Very cool. Thunderous Smite no longer requires concentration. Wrathful Smite got a nerf, as a saving throw is easier to make than an ability check. and the target no longer needs to take an action to end the spell. That's actually really sad because I really enjoyed the old Wrathful Smite. It was super sticky. The target also had disadvantage on the ability check, so getting rid of Wrathful Smite was actually really hard. The old Wrathful Smite is one of the most underrated spells in the game. It really is. Time to finally move on. At level 3, Paladins get Channel Divinity. You either get to use it for an option your subclass provides, or Divine Sense, which has been moved from 1st level to 3rd level. Quite an interesting change, as it now lasts 10 minutes, which is good. I'm not sure if I like the trait though, as it's more costly and comes into play later. But when you use it, you definitely get more out of it. Another change is that you only get back one use of your Channel Divinity on a short rest. I don't like that. If you have an hour, it's quite likely that you have 2 hours, meaning you can get both back. And when you don't, it adds an annoying amount of tracking. I remember reading a few comments a while ago like, oh, this is just one thing to track. It's not really that big of a deal. But the thing is, if they keep doing stuff like this, then it becomes a lot to track. It's like, well, this is technically one, and this is technically all. This is this and that, and blah, 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 blah. You gotta look at the bigger picture. Anyways, at level 5, most Paladins pick up Find Steed because it's the best spell and it's a standout. Now you get it for free, which is awesome. I love this. Find Steed was also changed in this UA. Instead of choosing an actual animal, it has basic stats with slight changes based on what creature type you choose. Out of Celestial, Fey, and Fiend. And you choose whatever it appears as. It also becomes better when you upcast it. One interesting thing I noticed is that if it dies, you can choose to get the same steed back when casting the spell again. I don't really know whether it means the same steed including the same stats, which is how I would interpret the same steed. But that means you could cast it at 2nd level and have it stay with whatever stats it had before. Overall, its stats are quite comparable to Find Steed in 5e, and at 4th level, it's quite comparable to Find Greater Steed, especially because it gains a flying speed. A big difference is its bonus action, of which I think Fey is the best one, but none of them are really outstanding. It also has an attack, but because it's always a controlled mount, it would only ever be able to use this when you are incapacitated as a rider, even if you don't actually mount it. 1D&D really needs to fix the mounting rules. I thought they would do it here because they addressed Find Steed, but apparently they didn't. Moving on, instead of getting a subclass feature at level 7, 15, and 20, you now get it at 6, 10, and 14. I like that overall, you get all your subclass features sooner. But I'm really disappointed that your subclass's aura is pushed back to level 10. That is 3 whole levels. Speaking of which, Paladin's aura of protection is delayed by a level. I really hope they realize the way that saving throws work in 5e is bad. Your bonuses just do not properly keep up with what enemies throw at you. Especially not for the saving throws you aren't proficient in, making Paladin's aura so strong compared to anything else it gets. Anyways, level 9 is a fantastic level for Paladins now. I don't think a lot of people will be talking about this, but I will. With the way spell lists work, all Paladins now gain access to Spirit Guardians by default. In its current iteration, it's a fantastic spell for ranged, kiting, and doing damage in melee. A perfect fit for this Paladin. And it covers an old weakness Paladins originally had. But that's not all. They also get a feature called Abjure Foes, which is really good. You affect Charisma mod number of people you want within 60 feet, and daze them for a minute without a saving throw. Dazed is pretty new for 1D&D, so let me bring it up again. This is fantastic for kiting because you can stay further away than an enemy's reach or range. They can only move or take an action, not both. If they do fail on the saving throw, they are also frightened, which means they cannot even move towards you at all. That's fantastic. Do keep in mind that them taking damage removes all of these effects, so focus on other targets in the meanwhile. Let's speedrun the remaining levels. They renamed Improved Divine Smite with Radiant Strikes, which makes a lot more sense, as it doesn't improve Divine Smites at all. Aura of Courage is delayed by 3 levels. Aura Expansion is a level earlier. At level 20, you now also get +2 to an ASI with no cap of 20. Dude, that's pretty epic! No, seriously, I do think this is good. Paladin subclass time. Oath of Devotion. They received a few changes worth talking about. First is Sacred Weapon, which can be used as a bonus action instead of an action. I really like that change, as it's a nice improvement from the old design. Finally, they get Holy Nimbus at level 14 instead of 20 with a few changes. You now emit sunlight instead of giving people advantage on certain saving throws. These changes really show that this subclass is intended to be used to fight kobolds like me, so I get disadvantage. Sunlight sucks. I don't like that. I'm joking, by the way, it's for vampires. I do like this feature. It's getting late and I'm getting sleepy. To summarize, melee paladins have become a lot worse comparatively to ranged paladins. The Novatonix of smites is gone, and Paladin's main identity of auras have been delayed. This all sounds pretty negative, but honestly, this UA includes quite some good too. I think a few more iterations and I would actually be quite happy with it. End of video. Bedtime. Good night.